Welcome to the SAP Art of Business studio here at the Heimat Museum in Davos during the World Economic Forum annual meeting. I'm José Carvalho. I'm the co-head and co-founder of the Intelligent Enterprise Institute. And for today's panel, I'm actually joined here with three great panelists that I would like to introduce. Next to me, it's Sneha Revanur. She's founder and president of Encode Justice, a leading youth movement for human-centered artificial intelligence. And she has provided advice to many people. She will do today as well to us. And her advice stakeholders include Interpol, it includes the White House and also the European Commission. Next, we have Professor James Landay, Vice Director and Faculty Director of Stanford Institute of Human-Centered AI, who's been focused on specializing in computer-human interactions, design, and also ubiquitous computing. And we also welcome Florian Mueller from Bain, Head of AI globally, of the AI practice, responsible for fostering partnerships, but also customer engagements with many customers on implementing AI, and also engage with the WEF Responsible Applications and Transformations Working Group. Now, this year at Davos, everything has been about AI. Here at the Heimat Museum, during the Art of Business events, we've been talking about the symbiosis between human and machine. And today, we would like to talk about how can we actually define an augmented person? How can we actually use AI to become augmented and have or shape a better future? But to start, I actually want to ask Florian to set maybe the scene on how we are actually doing. What is the general state of AI, particularly, what can we say about AI today in regards to transformation, in regards to what we can actually start obtaining from a value perspective?
Well, obviously AI has been around for decades, but I think for a lot of organizations there has been an awakening moment. The launch of ChatGPT has made it very aware for many organizations the potential that AI actually has for organizations. We're seeing the impact on three dimensions. It's on customer experience, reshaping how the interaction between organizations and customers are happening, productivity, efficiency, and then new product business model development as three overarching areas. So from customer experience, that obviously includes everything. I think a lot of discussion has been around the generative capabilities of the foundation model. So creating new engaging marketing content, creating engaging campaigns. Take a look at the Create Real Magic campaign of Coca-Cola, where they're reshaping the way that they're interacting with their customers. Or the launch of customer assistance, which we're seeing across the board, a lot of retailers and other organizations launching that to really get more engaged with their customers and reshape the experience that customers are having. Secondly, it's obviously around productivity and efficiency gains. So we're seeing that across the board in all functions within an organization, legal, HR, procurement, finance. There's literally no area where the technology cannot help and augment what humans are currently doing. And depending on what area we're looking at, the impact can be very substantial. So for example, we just supported the optimization of a procurement function, and that yielded 20% efficiency gains by introducing AI solutions to support them in preparing the RFP process, scanning the documents that they receive back. And then the third component, and I think there we're just starting to see the developments, is around new products, innovations, fundamentally reshaping business models. I think the most prominent example is around healthcare. I think where we've seen a lot of progress on the R&D side, where new tools are available that allow new medicine to be discovered in much shorter time frame. I think the antibiotics progress that has been made recently is one of those examples. But I think especially there, we're just at the beginning. A lot of organizations are currently focusing on making what they're currently doing faster and better. And I'm personally expecting a shift towards more the mid and long-term perspective. How is the technology actually fundamentally reshaping entire industries or entire organizations and how they're doing their business and what they're offering? So I think it's very real. A lot of impact that we're currently seeing within organizations. It's just the beginning of a journey. So I think we're just starting to see the initial impact. And obviously it's a journey of uncertainty, right? We don't know what the next steps are exactly going to be, how fast the development will happen. I think we all agree that development is faster than a lot of people would have originally thought. but it requires organizations to navigate in this time of uncertainty, but which is an opportunity to thrive and to differentiate through innovation and embracing the technology.
Right, and so you mentioned about people, and they're obviously shaped how the organizations need to face uncertainty. This is obviously something as well that people have to face somehow. And I would like to hear, maybe James, you could kind of talk about what does this mean in regards to the experience that people are actually having, right? So obviously all these impacts we have in the organizations and the impacts that we have in having AI present in everything we do. What does this mean for our experience as human beings?
Yeah, so this moment, I think, is really profound in how this technology is going to change how we interact with computing. The interface that we're using in computing today, whether it's on our phones or whether on our laptops, really traces its roots to the work of Doug Engelbart at the Stanford Research Institute back in the 1960s. And what's interesting is there were really two camps at that time. There was the Stanford AI Lab, led by John McCarthy, who is the person who named the field of AI. And then there was this other group working on what they called augmented intelligence. And what we see today, actually, is this idea of augmented intelligence that really never took off other than the computing interface you use, is now ready to happen with AI that works today, powering augmented intelligence. So it's really going to be an interface where AI is going to help people do things that they do better and take away some of the things they don't like or things that humans aren't as good at. And it's really important for us to think about how do we design AI for people and how do we design AI to augment their intelligence and augment them rather than think about replacement, which is a traditional way that AI and machine learning people might think about how to use AI.
So we had a colleague actually that mentioned, and also was mentioned in another panel, about the fact that it's not AI replacing people, it's people that know AI and use AI and are augmented by AI replacing people that are not, right? But when we talk about augmented people, right, maybe we can kind of just stay a bit on that one. What does it actually mean to be augmented? So you mentioned about people can be better. So do we say that we try to fill our pitfalls with AI? Shall we try to be better or to things that we are already better? How do we see it generally?
It all depends on the domain. So, Florian mentioned healthcare. AI is going to help us take care of our own bodies better. For example, many of us already are wearing fitness watches or fitness rings or other devices. They're very simplistic in what kind of feedback they might give you. And in fact, it tends to just be quantitative. And some research shows that's not really enough. But with the ability of AI, you can imagine we can all now afford a personal coach who's helping us with our exercise, our eating every day, and doing it in a way that works for our individual needs and values. So for example, a dumb coach might just say, hey, every morning you should be walking to work instead of driving your car, let's say. But maybe I have to drop off a child at childcare every morning far away. An intelligent coach is going to understand my needs and patterns and try to coach me in ways that are going to work well for my life. That's just one example. We've seen this obviously already taking off in programming with people using things like Copilot, and a lot of the reports showing that programmers are 30 or 40% more efficient. But you can imagine all roles, all different types of jobs, from health to programming, but to, education. You can help me learn some content, understand where I need to know more, understand what skills that I need to practice, and again, be very customized to me. That's not to say we replace teachers or education system, but it gives me a tool where I can more efficiently and hopefully more satisfying experience to kind of learn what I need to learn. And I think we're just going to see that in every kind of job. Just like you said, my colleague at Stanford, Kurt Langlot, said, will AI replace radiologists is the wrong question. The right answer is radiologists who use AI will replace radiologists who do not. And like you said, we can take that same sentence and apply it for many different domains, but it just won't happen automatically. We have to design thinking about a person and what their tasks and work experiences are, and design for them to have a nice augmented experience. And that's just really the first step. There's many other parts of the design process that have to change to deal with some of the issues and risks of AI.
which then I guess it really means that we do need a human-centric approach to design with AI. And Sneha, this is what your company's been doing in terms of pushing, being a youth movement to pushing human-centered AI in design. What can you define? How can you define human-centric design? So can you explain this a bit about?
Yeah, of course. I think as we've already discussed today, AI presents enormous risks, but also enormous opportunities. We've talked about the potential for AI to revolutionize disease diagnosis, to accelerate drug discovery, to help us predict natural disasters. I mean, there are so many positive transformative uses of AI. I think our primary concern as young people is that currently we're building without guardrails, and we need to take a step back and be more cautious and more intentional, and also ensure that AI dialogue is more participatory so that we're steering its future in the right direction in a collective way and not having its future decided by a handful of tech companies. I think that's really important to us. But I think that when I think about human-centered AI, I think about many of the same applications we've discussed today. So in the context of personalized medicine or in the context of designing an individualized learning experience. I mean, people have been talking about the potential for generative AI tools to really help support learning for students who have special learning needs by helping curate material or helping design these personalized learning experiences in ways that would be difficult for a human teacher, especially, for example, in a public school environment where they're, speaking to the needs of 30 or 40 students in one classroom at once. I think there are so many ways in which AI can be a unique asset in that kind of context. And so I think when I think about human-centric AI, I think about AI that does speak to documented human needs and that also is designed in a way that is participatory and that has public dialogue at the forefront.
I think this participatory aspect is what's special in this case. This idea that human-centered AI needs to be user-centered and designed for the user is really only the first step, because AI systems have potential impact on communities broader than just the intended users of a system. And so we need to actually have a design process that does user-centered design, but also does community-centered design and brings these other players into our design process. And then, in fact, if you design an AI system that eventually becomes ubiquitous, it has societal impact. And so we also need to have a societal analysis in our design process. And this new design process requires so many different skills that we can no longer rely on just technologists or even designers to do it. We need to involve social scientists and other domain experts into the process, in addition to the community of folks who are going to be impacted.
And what does that mean for organizations? Because we had actually another guest the other day as well mentioning that they are actually not anymore on exploration mode for AI. They are actually on the seek for profit. And he said it also in the good intention and the fact that actually it is real, it is here, it is something that is already providing value. How do organizations deal with that? Is it already embedded that it needs to be human-centric, or is there some work that we still need to do?
Well, I think it needs to be human-centric because otherwise it fails. I think if we take a look at large transformations, AI transformations, data transformations, whatever they are called, in most of the cases they fail because the people are not actually brought along. And it's actually the algorithms, the technology is only a small part of the success that AI is actually bringing. If you don't get the people side right, then you're going to fail. And this starts, and this is rooted in a couple of reasons. One is the adaptation and the acceptance of AI. So if you're developing a nice use case, but you're not bringing the organization along, if it's not being ideated by the people that are actually meant to use it, and you're not thinking through the entire process, how am I actually going to embed it into my business processes? How am I going to enable and train the people that are meant to work with it? They're never going to accept it and the use case is going to fail. So don't even start with it. So I think that's one important element. The second one is around also responsible AI and inclusiveness. We need to take the organization along. We need diverse teams being involved in the entire development process, from coming up with the idea to the development, to the red teams, to the testing, to the monitoring that needs to happen. Only that way we're going to make sure that we have a responsible solution for the organization. So I think those are the two reasons why it's absolutely critical. And that obviously changes the need on how we're going to take people along, as said. So it's a change, it's a cultural transformation, but it's also a question of training, enablement, education, right? It's people need to learn and understand the tools. Obviously, there's a debate because now I can just talk to ChatGPT in my natural language and it's going to produce code. But my strong belief is that we still need a basic understanding of analytic techniques of AI, of privacy questions, of responsible AI across the entire organization to be successful. And that is a training component that needs to happen.
I think I would say an organizational change that I think Florian hit on, and I hit on, is that these teams need to be diverse in backgrounds and experiences as well as in skill set. And they have to be diverse from the start. And many of the AI failures that we've seen out there early on, for example, computer vision systems that couldn't recognize Black women, those problems probably would not have happened at all had they had diverse teams with diverse skill sets. So that's one change that companies will need to make, is seeing is who on their teams and what kind of backgrounds. They're going to need to be more interdisciplinary. They can't simply have an organization, a separate team that checks for ethics or responsibility at the end. By then it's too late. The politics of shipping product will always win over somebody saying to be cautious. So it really has to start at the beginning and change how teams and what their processes are.
Sneha, I think you wanted to add something there or not?
No, I think I just wanted to echo that. Definitely, ethics should not be an afterthought. It has to be baked into the initial design and development process. And I think so long as we have these ethics and responsible AI teams that are divorced from the product development teams, like Professor Landay mentioned, that will never overpower the desire to innovate, right? So I think that's critical.
And I think the important thing there is also it's not only the right thing to do. It's not only ethically and morally the right thing to do. It actually gives us better business outcomes. We just did a study and we're seeing that organizations that have a responsible AI framework and processes and roles in place, actually their use cases are giving them twice the profit that other organizations are getting. So it also, from an economic and a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense to be responsible when you're using AI, because it gives people a framework, right? They know what is right, what is wrong. They know what use cases to pursue. They can move much faster. They can move with stronger rigor versus others who don't have something in place and they always need to navigate. And is this now right? Is this now wrong? So it is absolutely right to do, and it actually also pays off.
So I would like actually to move a bit into the learning part, because we always mention when we talk about AI, one of the components we talk about is machine learning. Obviously, if we talk about a symbiosis between human and machine, the learning needs to be on both sides, and actually both needs to be empowered so that the symbiosis is perfect. When we look into the learning, obviously there's one thing around using AI in the learning process, for sure. But then is another one, what does learning mean for people that will have to deal with AI? So what changes there? What is the evolution on bringing learning into AI into learning and preparing people to deal with AI?
So I do think, this revolution that ChatGPT set off was really already going on in terms of deep learning. Really was starting to be in our products, starting really 2014 really started to take off. And we saw it in many things we use, but as a public, people weren't really aware of what was going on. But what ChatGPT did is it exposed an interface that allowed anybody to play with this. They didn't have to learn Python or use, Colab to explore AI. They could just, type into a machine and now speak into a machine. And that's been an incredible learning experience for the general public to understand, hey, how might this help me at home in helping my kid in school? Or how might this help me in my job? Or how might this help me in planning my vacation? So that has been a great service, I think, for the whole community in terms of giving a learning experience. And I think we're going to see further tools like this. This is just really the first. There's going to be many others, but there are many that are going to be consumer focused that will allow people to really learn it. Now, I think companies and the education system also need to make sure that people are learning certain rigorous things. For example, understanding what AI can and cannot do, understanding what kind of mistakes AI will make, so that people can understand the risk and understand some of the ethical questions. So, that has to filter down through corporate training, through university training, and, even through primary school training to understand these, because it's going to impact everyone's lives throughout society.
And we see that, we mentioned corporate, universities, secondary and primary schools. Can we look into, which ones of those actually are using AI and actually accepting AI more than others? And the reason I'm asking this is, for example, when we talk about secondary school or primary school, and the biggest concern is that, kids just do their reports basically generated by AI, whilst possibly being afraid of that is actually a second thought, because the important thing potentially that they are already using that and they need to be taught on how to use it.
Yep. So we're probably going to see 3 to 5 years of real struggle in our educational system as teachers and organizations fight this technology, because they're like, people are going to cheat with it. There are some obviously who've already embraced it and said, okay, how do I teach students to use this, because this is what their future will be. And it's actually a great opportunity. So the dean of our Graduate School of Education, Dan Schwartz, who's one of the world experts in learning sciences, has said that there's so many innovations that graduate schools of education have come up with for education, but they're almost impossible to get adoption into the schools. But AI is going to force schools to change. How do we teach? How do we evaluate your work? And because of that major change that they're going to have to make, many of these other ideas that have nothing to do with AI, they're just great ideas that have been shown in research to work well, are going to also infiltrate the school systems at the same time. So there will be upheaval, I think, over 5 years as people struggle as to first fight it and then figure out how to use it. But I think what we're going to see if we look, 10 years in the future, our education system is going to change at every level, because AI is now going to be a tool. Students are going to learn to use it and learn better because it's going to help them in many ways, but it's also going to bring in a lot of other innovations during this time where the system's going to have to change.
Yes, definitely. If I can just chime in there, I've seen my professors take entirely contrasting approaches on the issue of AI. At this point, it's a requirement for all my professors to have some sort of ChatGPT policy in the core syllabus, and we've had some who have been diametrically opposed to its use under all circumstances, and some who have encouraged responsible and thoughtful use of ChatGPT for class assignments. I even have some friends who have been required to complete assignments with ChatGPT, or who have been required to complete an assignment on their own and then ask ChatGPT to complete it and then compare the results. And I think those are really valuable educational experiences. I think a lot about previous innovations that have entirely transformed or at least significantly impacted learning. For example, the introduction of the calculator. And I think now that's just so widely accepted. And, we obviously have some general policies around when you can use a calculator on exams or on homework, but, it's not something that we have entirely shunned and forced out of our classrooms. And I think that in a couple of years, we'll see a pretty similar paradigm for AI, where, of course, it's not to be used in all circumstances, and there are certain environments where we really do want to encourage students to hone in on critical thinking and creativity. But at the same time, there are so many use cases where it can be enormously powerful, and actually using ChatGPT, and not just ChatGPT, but interacting with AI as a whole in a responsible and thoughtful way can become a new skill that we really do want to train students to have. And so I think that's how I envision this unfolding.
Indeed. And what you see in regards to the organizations, corporate organizations, how they are also approaching the same, in one way, adapting their learning paths and training for employees, and the other way, adopting AI for it.
Yeah. Well, I think all of them need to learn and need to be educated. I think the key challenge is it's a learning journey, and we don't know what the final point is, right? It's because it's always moving, and that's why the content and the learning pathways need to adjust constantly, because just the evolution of the technology and the new introductions in the market require a constant learning from everyone. But sharing a bit on what we're doing with our clients, but also what we are doing internally. I think the education and training needs to touch the entire organization. So it needs to start with the executive committee, with the supervisory board, because they need to lead by example. It needs to touch the entire organization, and then there's obviously also different trainings for the technical teams within a company, so the data science, machine learning, engineering, and so on, teams that the organizations have. And it needs to touch different elements and different building blocks. So it's obviously understanding the fundamentals of the technology, machine learning, AI, data, the latest technologies that are out there. And then, as said before, but also the important components of data security, privacy, responsible AI, because everybody in the organization needs to embrace it. And then obviously training around the specific tooling that the organizations are offering. So that can be basic prompt engineering training, that can be training around the specific tools that are being introduced in the organizations. So we, for example, we have 12 custom applications that we're using, that we're providing to our consultants around the globe, and they obviously need to stay on top and need to be knowledgeable on how to use them in the best ways. And then it's this constant keeping up to date, right? It's because it's changing so fast, and everybody needs to understand what are the evolutions. And so we've defined a continuous learning path, which is touching the entire organization, tailored by the specific groups and the different tenures that we have. And then we're just constantly updating it dependent on the latest developments that we're seeing.
I think I would like to go back to you, Sneha, because obviously one of the things that we see out there is always the concept that the younger generations will actually also accelerate this adoption at the workplace. But what is the role? What is the role that the younger generations want to play? Not only in the adoption, but actually to make it human-centric as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, there's one thing that I always say. It's that our generation is the next generation of developers, of consumers, of advocates, of voters, of members of the community. I think that we are the ones who will inherit the impacts of the technology that we're building today. And so if we aren't building with proper guardrails, even if today's generation or those in power today aren't there to kind of experience the brunt of that, it'll be us that does. And I think that one more thing that I want to bring up is that we are the first generation that has grown up in a world almost entirely governed by algorithms and by powerful technology. I mean, we intimately understand what it's like to grow up in a world where social media can curate the information that we're exposed to, the perspectives that we're consuming. It has entirely changed our concept of connectedness of human relationships. And I think that we can say that more so than any prior generation. And so I think a combination of that lived experience in a world governed by technology and the fact that we will experience a long run impacts makes it especially important for young people to be involved in AI discourse. And I think that Professor Landay, you talked earlier about the importance of integrating ethics into university curriculums. And what I've seen from my friends who are studying computer science and who want to work in the tech force one day is that slowly but surely our generation is moving towards this more socially responsible and conscious view of development. And I do have faith that the next generation of computer scientists will be those who are, fundamentally rooted in these principles around ethics and, building in a human-centric way. But at the same time, it's really, really important that just as we don't have ethics and responsible AI teams that are entirely divorced from product teams in a corporate sense, we're not treating ethics coursework as an afterthought, and it's actually being baked into all of the AI coursework that we're teaching. And so I think that demarcation between disciplines, while I do really applaud the fact that we are bringing multiple disciplines into the conversation, that demarcation might encourage this mindset that, again, it's an afterthought. It's just an add-on. It's just a, curricular requirement that we're trying to get out of the way, when in fact it should be baked into our very understanding of AI itself.
I would also point out that as a faculty member for many years, I've actually noticed a change in the students who we're seeing over the last few years, that they really have more interest in the social impact of technology. Mm-hmm. We have courses that are student initiated on CS for social good, and they'll have hundreds of students in these clubs and courses because they're motivated. They just need the tools to help them do it in a way that's actually going to have positive social impact. Because we think, just saying I do AI for good isn't good enough. Just having good intentions to say, hey, I'm going to use AI for, solving the environmental problem, or AI for health, or AI for education. Just having intention is enough. With this technology, you have to have this right team, the right design processes to actually achieve that good. But these students have the motivation. And we've also changed curriculum in the university level, similar to what Sneha is saying, in that we have a program called Embedded Ethics, which we're very conscious to thank our friends out there at Harvard, where we copied it from, where we actually embed the ethics in the different courses, in addition to the capstone course that we've had for years. But it's not just that one checkbox, I need to do that to graduate. It's embedded in the lessons. When you're learning about NLP, you'll learn about, what some of the trade-offs are of large language models, for example. So it's changing our curriculum, but also the students, I think, are changed in a positive way.
So does this mean as well that we may actually have potentially a generation in perfect symbiosis with AI and generations that are not in perfect symbiosis with AI? Coming to the marketplace, for example, or
I mean, we've had this issue of digital divides, sometimes through economics, sometimes through age in the past. And we need to, again, be conscious that we make sure that we're not leaving people behind because they're older and they may not grasp it as well, because this technology is going to affect, again, everybody. It's so ubiquitous that we need to make sure that even people who are, my age, understand this technology and how it may impact their lives, their retirement, whatever it is, their finances. And so it's a cross society game here that we need to make sure that we're working on. So it's great that, Sneha is working with the youth, but, there are other people who are working with the older adults. And in fact, one of the community workshops we led, when I say you need to do community-based design, was with older adults in the Tenderloin district in San Francisco, which is a low-income neighborhood. Over half the participants were LGBTQ. Over half were from other marginalized identities, including race and disability. And we involved them in a workshop where they could really get out what the value trade-offs were between using an intelligent technology, in this case, a speech-based agent that could talk to them about their health and give them feedback about their health care. And what were some of the trade-offs? And those trade-offs were things that may not have been anticipated by somebody like me, who has a different lived experience. And so that's really important to engage these communities of different ages and backgrounds to really develop the technology in a way that would be positive for them.
Interesting. So we are getting close to the time, but I would like to actually ask a question to all of you. If you could design or describe what the perfect symbiosis would be, what is the augmented person in the future, how would you describe that? Who would like to go first?
Oh, I mean, I think predicting the future is always hard, but I think, it should feel like I'm doing what I would want to do anyways. And this thing is helping me not waste my time trying to figure out something that I need information at a certain time or a skill at a certain time. But it should be almost ambient in some ways, in that it's in the environment around me, but doesn't require my attention all of the time to interact with it. The problem with what we've developed today in our mobile phones, and I'm sure everyone out there is used to this, is these things take our attention. They consume our attention. You see people, everyone's walking down the street looking at their phone, and that's actually been shown to be bad for our brains, bad for our society. So I would hope that actually this future of symbiosis is where it's more ambient around me, subtle cues that don't have to always be in my foreground attention, but can help me move through my life in a more smooth way, in a way that's more satisfying and happy.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. I think if we can crack the code as to how to, unlock the future of human and AI interaction such that it's not generating addiction, it's not generating unhealthy dependence. For example, we've seen reports already of people, developing relationships or human-like relationships with chatbots and love bots. And I think that obviously is incredibly concerning. So if we can move past that and learn how to encourage humans to interact with AI in a way that is healthy, but also in ways that still encourage them to stay connected to other humans, I think that will be incredibly powerful. So just making sure that we have the parameters correct there. But of course, recognizing that AI can be a really valuable assistant that, helps us complete a lot of those menial tasks, whether that's, planning our eating choices or planning our exercise or, like you mentioned before, planning our route to work. I think those are things where AI, can and should be used. But at the same time, we have to recognize that it doesn't necessarily have to infiltrate every aspect of our lives. And I think being more intentional about where AI can be useful and where we probably should still not be deploying AI and, making those decisions in a participatory way, I think is the way forward.
Yeah, I can echo a lot of points that you've just said. I would say three things. I think the one is exactly what you've described, allowing people to get rid of the tasks that they don't want to do and allowing them to spend time on more valuable things, whether it's doing work in a better way, spending more time with their customers, or even being more fulfilling for them because it's not as stressed and they don't have to hurry in doing those things. And secondly, it's allowing new people to participate, right? It's we're seeing a lot of positives coming out of it. I heard just the other day about blind coders. So thinking about all of the people that are currently can't participate in the workforce or don't have the same access, they don't have the skills that are currently required. I think it's a huge opportunity to allow them to participate in a way that they haven't been doing before. And then thirdly, it being responsible, because I think it's supporting people and it's bringing all of the good out, but it's not discriminating, it's not being non-inclusive. Then I think it's a great way to augment people in their world.
Well, great. I would like to thank you, Florian, James, and Sneha for all of those insights. For me, it has been very, very valuable. So I hope it has been valuable for you as well. So today we went through the synergy between human intelligence and machines. What is the evolution of AI? What does this mean for human beings? And actually, how can we develop in a way to reach this perfect symbiosis? I know that today I was augmented. I was augmented not by AI. I was augmented by people knowledge. I have the opportunity to be augmented by AI as well, and I hope you do so and that you enjoy the day today. So keep in touch and stay tuned. More content will come to you as well.